I've got another story time for you to continue the series on stories from my life. This time, as you can see from the title, it's going to be what I learned from my week of suspension from high school. To be honest, at that time in my life, I learned absolutely nothing except how to get away with bad stuff and have fun. In retrospect, it was not fun. It was not wise choices. It's hilarious, you're going to see, but I could have killed myself. I sincerely, literally could have died from what I did. It was just stupid. Okay, let's get on with it. I will tell you what I did, but first let me tell you that in retrospect, my goodness, since then, I've learned a lot. I have learned a lot. I'm a completely different person than I was then. And, I still have fun, but not in stupid and irresponsible ways, not in ways that could kill me. Okay. Since then, I've filled up all my empty spaces with things that are life-giving, such that my good choices, my lifetime of good choices started when I was 22. But this started when I accepted Jesus into my heart, and he started the lifetime process of transforming me into what I am now. But way back then, oh my goodness. Well, let me just get on with it. Okay. I was about 14 or 15. Okay. An early 15 or a late 14. And I was at boarding school, and if you saw my last video about storytime video of when I did drugs, I had already been experimenting with, marijuana and LSD and things like that, but I had never in my whole life gotten drunk. And so this really good friend of mine and I decided that we were going to set aside the next week to get drunk. Well, we were at her house the week before this episode happened, and we were at her house because my parents lived in Florida. The boarding school was in Connecticut, and she lived in New Jersey. And so I went to her house for the weekend. And when her parents weren't looking, we got an empty Coke bottle, because back in those days, you didn't have the plastic. This is in must have been in 1971, something like that. And back in those days, there were no plastic Coke bottles with the screw on. There was the glass bottles, and so we got a stopper. We stopped it up with like tape or tin foil, something like that. But we got an empty Coke bottle, and when they weren't looking, we raided their liquor cabinet. Back in those days, people kept like liquor cabinets with all different sorts of alcohol. And so we did not know that mixing alcohol really was like a poison. It was creating poison. But what we did is we put a little bit of every kind of alcohol into the Coke bottle until we filled it up. And then we stopped it up with tin foil or something like that. Then we waited until the next weekend, and she and I were going to just totally just down this thing, take turns downing it. She chickened out, and I didn't. So all of my friends were watching me, and I just started to, I don't know how it must have tasted so terrible. I just started to chug this horrible poison into my body. And that's about, I can remember myself standing in the hallway of my boarding school, chugging this thing. And then the next thing I remember is, well, simultaneously to this, sorry if I'm just going by my memory. So simultaneously to this, there was a little concert going on with the Glee Club. And I had a chip on my, Teddy, please, hey, shh, no. I had a chip on my shoulder because the Glee Club had not accepted me. I was rejected after I tried out in the beginning of the year from the Glee Club. So here I was with this alcohol in me, with a chip on my shoulder, and there was a Glee Club concert going on. Ah, excuse me. Jose, can you deal with the dogs? Thank you. There was a Glee Club concert going on, and the last thing I remember after I started to chug it was I remember telling my friends that I wanted to get my way into that concert. Oh my goodness. So in the kind of big living room area of the boarding school, on the steps leading up to the dorms, the Glee Club was standing on the steps. Okay, so that's in the front staircase. I decided that I was going to go around to the back staircase and then make my way over to them. And I don't know what I had in my mind to do, but I was somehow going to interrupt them or something. Okay, so I get my way over to the back staircase, and the next thing I know, I tumble down the stairs, and I'm just lying. And this is, the back stairs led to the front door. And I'm just laying out like this with my eyes wide open where the entrance is to the whole boarding school. And this sweet little old lady, now I'm a little old lady, but this sweet little old lady named Margaret Brown waddles up to me, looks down at me, and all of a sudden I knew I was in trouble. Oh my goodness, what was I going to do? I had to cover up my transgression. And the first thing that popped into my mind was, I just jumped up and I said, I've got the flu. As if she could have smelled me a mile away, for one thing. I think that everything goes black from that time on. I don't know how I got over to the infirmary. They must have carried me over. But the next thing I knew, I was with a nurse in the infirmary, and I was just throwing up. Thank God, because I would have died if I hadn't have thrown up. My friends tell me later that they came to visit me, and all of the throw up was in my hair. I had longer hair at that time, and my hair was sticking out with, just pasted with throw up. And they had me tied to a chair, sitting up. That's what they saw. I kind of vaguely remember that, vaguely. But then, oh my goodness, the next thing I remember was coming to my senses and coming before the board. There was a board made up of students, faculty, and just staff. And I came before them to be judged. And so it was scary. It was very scary. And that's when I got my sentence to go home. Well, I was sitting on the airplane going home, and I was sweating bullets because I had to fly back to Florida for a week to be able to spend my week away from school and receive my punishment. Well, my dad, who would have really come down hard on me, I know, was away on a business trip. And I got off the airplane, And I must have been so scared. I kind of remember, but I must have been so scared. My mother saw my face just so petrified, and she said, I can see by your face that you have learned your lesson. And guess what? I spent a week sunbathing. I think it was winter, and everybody else was freezing in the cold in Connecticut, and I spent a week sunbathing. I didn't learn my lesson. I have sense, and please, I do not recommend anybody doing what I did, but made a nice story. Okay, that's all for now. Until the next excerpt from my life. Bye.